Welcome back. I'm Steve Levoniak here at New Tech Machinery. In today's video series, we'll be discussing on how to install and adjust your shear dies for the new board and batten. These are the tools you're going to need for installing the board and batten. You got a 3/8 drive ratchet, foot-long 3/8 drive extension, 3/8 drive 4-inch extension. You got a 9/16 1/2-inch 3/8 drive, and a 9/16 wrench, box end, open end, a 1/2 inch, and also a 3/8 5/32 Allen wrench. In this video, you will see me using this 3/8 drive low torque driver to tighten all the fasteners. This specific driver is configured to deliver 16 foot-pounds of torque. If you do not have a low torque driver, be sure to set the torque of all the 5/16 bolts to 16 foot-pounds. A torque wrench is the best method to set this torque. The damage that could be caused by improper torquing is pulling the threads out of the gold bar, resulting in you're gonna have to replace the gold bar. Cross-threading the bolts. Lock washer and washer will embed into the aluminum, which will then eventually come loose and your tooling will be loose. By following these torque specs, you will ensure that the tooling is properly secured. And at that point, we'll bring in our torque wrench. We have an old-fashioned one with a bar scale. At this point, you'd use your foot-long extension with a 1/2 inch socket. At that point, we'll attach it and bring it to read 16 to 17 foot-pounds of torque, then we know we're properly secured. As you can see here, we already have the covers off from our previous videos of how to adjust and also how to install the board and batten. So with the covers off, let's go ahead and get started. By the way, this board and batten video was done on an SSQ2 2023 with a unique controller. Before we get started on installing the #1 shear blade on the board and batten and the entry exit dies, we got to think safety first. And in order to do this procedure, let's go ahead and hit the emergency stop button on the unique controller. And then on the left-hand side, let's go ahead and power down the controller so there's no power activating the system. And now we are ready to work on our shear. With the shear guard off, you'll notice a warning label. The warning label is if you operate this machine without the shear guard, severe damage will happen. So in that case, you always want to work in front of the shear or behind the shear, never through the shear. The first step in this process is we'll go ahead and cut a 7 to 8 foot piece of material. We'll load up in the entry guide, we'll jog it through the machine till we get past the bead rollers, then we'll stop, and then I'll demonstrate the next step. Now at this point that we got our material to the shear, now it's time to install the #1 shear blade for the new board and batten. And the tools that are required is just a 9/16 socket or even just a wrench to install the bolts. Now in this step, you use your 2 existing bolts that we had in the shear, the grade 8 9/16 and the #1 blade. You take the skinny point of the blade and pour it towards the center like this. Install your 2 bolts like so. Grab your 9/16, make sure it's pushed up flush up against here, then just go ahead and tighten it. At this point, your #1 shear blade is set up for the board and batten, and the next step will be installing the entry dies, the left and the right side. The first step here is identifying your right entry die, as you see right here. And what you look for is the bevel point on your tool steel here that indicates that it's the entry. And also when it bolts onto the inside, the opening here should go towards the center of the panel. Now let's identify the left die entry on the board and batten. Is this one right here. There is no bevel on this one. All you look for is the opening going towards the center. So this here be lined up against your shear blades, which I'll show you here in a minute. For this step, we're going to be installing the left side entry die, and the tool you're going to be required is just a 1/2 inch wrench or just a 1/2 inch socket with a 4-inch extension. As you install this, use your existing bolt, and what you want to do is just make sure this is like going to the center and we're away from the edge so it doesn't crash into the solid part of the die. Then you thread your one bolt in, and you want to make sure you're at both ends of the slot when you put the bolts in so you have enough adjustment to slide the die back and forth for proper alignment. At this point, I will just snug up the bolts finger tight. Now that we got the left side entry die on, let's go ahead and install the right side entry die. Same process, just slide it down. We'll line up the opening, making sure it's going towards the center, and install our 2 bolts. Just finger tight right now. Now that we got the entry dies set up, now we've got to go back to the unique controller, power it back up on the right-hand side, flip the switch, wait for it to power up, then we'll pull out the emergency stop button, and then we'll jog the material slowly through the shear dies, and then we'll line them up properly at that point. Now at this point, let's go ahead and jog the material slowly through the entry dies. Generally, I want to jog it out about 6 to 8 inches. At this point, we'll go ahead and stop the machine by pushing the emergency stop button. At that point, once you get your gap set and making sure we're sitting square, let's go ahead and tighten down the bolts on the inside of the left die. At that point, you just use your 1/2-inch socket with a 4X extension, works very well in this process, and just go ahead and tighten it. Tighten the outside, then go ahead and tighten the inside one. At that point, we'll move over to the right side. All right, on the right side entry die, we got to look at a couple things here. One is on your panel to make sure we're not deflecting off of the dies that rides on the inside of your board and batten here. You should be able to push down and also lift up a little bit. As you can see right now, I can't lift up a little bit, so there's no play, so it's gonna redirect your panel. You want it floating through there. So in this process, what we're gonna have to do is loosen up our center bolt here with the washer, loosen up so we can raise the shear up a little bit, and I'll show you that in this process. The first step is loosen up this bolt with the washer. We'll loosen that up. Then down below is a jacking screw. Loosen up the jam nut underneath it, use a 1/2-inch wrench, and then what we want to do is turn it clockwise to raise the shear up so I can get a little bit of play here. Now that we got play, we go ahead and lock the main bolt back down. Take your jam nut, go ahead and spin that all the way up and lock it down so it doesn't lose your height. And then now we're ready to lock down our right entry die. In this process, I back the material up just a little, just to show you how this should look when you set up your right entry die. What you want is this gap right here, you want to be about 1/16 away from this corner right here. So you're not scraping on it, redirecting the panel. So all you do is just move the die back and forth. Once you get your gap, go ahead on the inside and lock down your 2 bolts. 1/2-inch socket, and go ahead and just snug it up and tighten it up. Make sure you get both bolts. Now that we got our left and right entry dies set up, now it's time to move the shear blade to line up properly to the material. And the way we go about doing that is this gap right here is supposed to match the profile. As you can see, if I took a scale straight down, we're hitting on the panel. So what we're gonna have to do is loosen up the 7 bolts on the backing plate, slide it over, so then we're sitting in here like this. The tool for this operation, you'll just need a 9/16 socket. Loosen up the 7 bolts on the back, then we can slide it over. At that point, we'll just slide it over like that. So what we're looking for is a little bit on the slope on each side, as you can see right here. Once you achieve that, go ahead and snug them back up. All right, now before we get started on our exit dies, let's make sure that we still have our emergency stop activated for safety precautions. We're gonna install our left entry die. Just match it up with the entry one. Install your left shear die exit. Go ahead and install your bolts through the slot. Finger start them. At this point, you just want to square it up with the entry one, like so, and go ahead and snug it up just using a 1/2-inch socket or wrench. Now we're done with this step. Now we'll move over to the right side exit die. Now we'll just go ahead and install the right side entry die with just one little twist to it. When you install it, slide it through there, slide your bolts in. Once again, just finger tight the bolts in. Now when we're lining up the right exit die, you want to be about a 32nd to the outside of the entry die. And by way of doing that is sighting in through here, finding the entry die on the inside and just slightly sliding this over to show the proper alignment. So that way there, when you shear, you don't get it, it won't catch the flare part of the panel. Now that I got the proper alignment, let's go ahead and tighten up our bolts. Now that we got our entry and exit shear dies all set up, tightened down, one last step we got to check is the gap between the shear blades and the tool steel. If there's a gap, I'm going to show you how to correct that, because if we leave a gap when you shear, it's going to tear your panel. The tools you're going to need is just a 1/2 inch wrench or a 1/2 inch socket and a 5/32 Allen wrench. As you can see that we have a gap between here and our shear die. The proper way of doing that is adjusting our set screws on the bottom. What you want to do is loosen up your nuts, your jam nuts. And the way this works is take your 5/32 Allen wrench. You just want to bring it in till it touches your plate. Do that on both sides first. Once you're there, when you tighten the left bottom, it's going to move the right top. And when I say tighten, maybe a 1/16 of an inch. And as you tighten it, you'll see it draw in. Then do the same on the other side, draw it in. You don't want to go too tight, you just want to just barely bring it up and touches it. Tighten up your jam nuts. And just make sure your shear dies are tight. Sometimes in this process, you might have to loosen up your shear dies just a hair. As you tighten this, lock it down and recheck it. The proper way is if you take a piece of paper, if you can fit a piece of paper through there, you need to snug it up just a hair. Now that we got the shear dies adjusted to the shear blades, now we're ready to power up the unique controller and do our first shear cut. Let's pull out our emergency stop button. Go ahead and hit the blue button to hit start. We'll jog the material out at least 6 to 8 inches. Then now knowing that with the covers off, we're in the maintenance mode, in the manual mode, the shear button, we're gonna have to use both sides on the box. You got one on the left, one on the right. You have to hit them both in order for the shear to activate. So once you're ready, everything's clear, go ahead and press it and hold it. Let go, the shear's back up. We'll go ahead and hit start feed and we'll jog it through slowly. Once again, we'll bring it out another 6 to 8 inches and we'll shear this piece. At this point, we'll go ahead and hit the emergency stop button to shut the power down the machine. We'll grab our last piece we cut and we'll inspect it to see how the shear is cutting. All right, picked up this piece off of our first cut. What you want to inspect for is every corner to make sure we're not tearing the material. You want to look at entry and exit. As this piece looks, it looks good. It shows we set everything correctly. It came through the machine without hearing a ting. So at this point, we're ready to run the rest of the material out, shear off the back end, and then we'll check the panel for straightness. All right, now that we inspect the panel, it looked good. Now we just pull out the emergency stop button, hit the blue button to start. And now we're gonna run the panel out and shear off the back half of it. At this point, it's out past the last drive roller. So all I do is just slide it out. All right, at this point, once you're about right here, about 6 inches on the inside of the dice is when we want to go ahead and shear this part off. Remember, you got to hit your left and right button at the same time and hold it in until it hits the bottom, then release. Once the shear comes up, go ahead and hit the emergency stop button. And now it's time to inspect the panel to make sure we're still running true. So you want to check that leg and also flip around and see how this leg measures. At this point, if you got to make adjustment because you're not running truly straight, please see our video in our series on how to adjust your board and batten. At that point, if you are running true, let's go ahead and install the covers back on. We'll start off with the top part of the shear box. Like that, and then we'll go ahead and tighten them up with a 3/8 wrench. Now that we got our top shear cover on, now we're going to install our box assembly specifically for the board and batten profile, which will come with your profile. Now at this point, we're going to install our 3 bolts, 5/16 by 3/4 with a lock and a SAE through our slots. And we'll just finger tight them right now. Now once you've got the box in and your 3 bolts, go ahead and push up and go ahead and lock your bolts down. Now that we got our box assembly bolted up on our 3 bolts, now we got a slider position here. What you want to do is sight through your female side, your right side, and line up this profile to your entry and exit female dies. Now that we got it positioned correctly with the entry and exit dies on the right side, now it's time to tighten up your bolts. Now once that is tight, now it's time to install our bolt back in to help hold the run-out stands. Now at this point, we are ready to install the top covers and ready to go run your first shiny board and batten profile. Now that we got our covers on, thank you for watching this video series on how to set up and adjust your shear dies on the board and batten, and we'll see you in the next video. Thank you.